Every small town has a building that refuses to die, a structure so stubborn, so deeply rooted in the earth, that it seems to exist outside of time. In Harlan, Kentucky, that building was Jessup's Hardware. It sat on the corner of Main Street and Cumberland Avenue, a two-story block of stone and brick that had been standing there since 1903. The first floor had been a hardware store for 60 years, then a feed supply for 20, then nothing at all for the last 15. The roof had caved in on the west side. The front windows were boarded up with plywood that had turned gray and soft with age. Weeds grew from cracks in the foundation. A maple tree had taken root in the second-floor bathroom and poked its branches through a hole in the roof. The building was an eyesore. Everyone agreed. The mayor agreed. The city council agreed. The building needed to come down. But Jessup's Hardware had a quality that no one had anticipated when they first started talking about demolition. It would not come down. In the spring of 2014, the city of Harlan condemned the Jessup building. The property had been seized for back taxes years ago. No heirs, no claims. The city hired a demolition contractor out of Lexington, a company called Premier Demolition Services, to tear the building down and clear the lot. Rick Stanton, the owner of Premier, drove down to assess the job. He spent about 45 minutes looking at the building, poked at the mortar with a screwdriver, and submitted a bid for $38,000 with a timeline of 1 week. Standard demolition. Two-story commercial building. Nothing special. Rick was wrong about that last part. Premier brought a crew of 5 men and a mid-size hydraulic excavator on a Monday morning in June. The plan was simple. Use the excavator to pull down the walls from the top, load the debris into trucks, haul it away. A week, maybe less. They had done this 100 times. The operator, a man named Craig, positioned the excavator at the northeast corner, raised the boom, and swung the bucket into the top of the wall. The bucket bounced off. Craig swung again, harder. The bucket hit the wall with a sound like a church bell, rang off, and left a mark about as deep as a fingernail scratch. Craig looked at Rick. Rick looked at the wall. The wall looked at both of them and did not seem concerned. Let me tell you why that wall did not move. Jessup's Hardware had been built by a man named Orville Jessup in 1903. Orville was a stonemason by trade and a perfectionist by nature. He had built the hardware store not as a commercial building, but as a monument. The exterior walls were 18 inches thick, not brick, not cinder block, but cut limestone quarried 15 miles south of Harlan and hauled to town by mule wagon. Each stone had been hand-dressed with hammer and chisel until it fit its neighbors with the precision of a jigsaw puzzle. The mortar was a blend of Portland, hydrated lime, and crushed aggregate that had, over 111 years, hardened into something closer to stone than mortar. The interior was no less formidable. Floor joists of hand-hewn oak, 8 inches by 12 inches, 4 oak columns, each a single tree trunk 14 inches in diameter, running from the basement footings to the roof line. The basement was dug into limestone bedrock with walls 3 feet thick at the base. Orville Jessup had not built a hardware store. He had built a fortress. And for 111 years, that fortress had stood against everything Harlan County could throw at it. Craig spent 2 days trying to break through. He managed to remove some interior woodwork and pull down damaged roofing, but the stone walls were essentially immune. The excavator's bucket was designed for digging earth, not breaking cut limestone. Rick called in a hydraulic breaker attachment. It hammered for 4 hours and broke through about 2 square feet of limestone. At that rate, demolition would take 3 months. He brought in a bigger machine, a Caterpillar 330, 75,000 pounds with a heavy breaker attachment. It did better, but not much. The limestone was too hard and too thick, and the mortar had turned the walls into monolithic slabs with no seams to exploit. By Friday evening, after 5 days, Rick had demolished approximately 15% of the building. He had burned through $22,000 in costs. His crew was exhausted. Jessup's hardware still stood on the corner, battered but defiant. Rick pulled his crew out Saturday morning. He told the mayor that standard equipment could not handle the job. He recommended specialized high-reach equipment at $80,000 minimum. The city had budgeted $40,000. The building would have to wait. Again. The story should have ended there. But word travels fast in a small town, and the story of the indestructible hardware store reached a man named Tucker Ramsey on a Tuesday evening at the Pine Mountain Grill. Tucker was 68 years old and had been operating heavy equipment since he was old enough to see over the dashboard of his father's bulldozer. His father, Henry, had run a small excavation company in Harlan County for 30 years. Henry had taught Tucker everything, not from a manual, but in the seat of a machine, hour after hour, year after year. Tucker's real gift was with excavators, specifically with one excavator, a 2001 Caterpillar 345B that he had bought used in 2006 for $95,000. It had 11,000 hours on it when he bought it. Over the next 8 years, Tucker had replaced or refurbished every major component. New hydraulic pumps, rebuilt cylinders, custom rock bucket with hardened carbide teeth designed for breaking stone. Tucker knew every sound that machine made, every vibration, every hesitation. He could feel through the controls when the hydraulic pressure was dropping, when a bearing was beginning to wear. When other operators hit rock and backed off, Tucker leaned in. He understood what the machine could handle because he had rebuilt every part of it with his own hand. There was nothing inside that engine, nothing inside those hydraulic lines that Tucker had not touched, measured, and put back together. His father used to say that a man and his machine are like a horse and rider. You can buy the best horse in the county, but if you do not know how to ride, the horse is just an expensive animal. Tucker had been riding this particular horse for 8 years, and they understood each other the way old partners do, without needing to explain. When Tucker heard about the Jessup building, he stopped eating and listened. Louis Fairchild, a city councilman, was explaining that the city had spent $22,000 trying to demolish a building that would not come down. Tucker finished his coffee and walked over. "Louis," he said, "that building on Main Street, I can take it down." Louis stared at him. Rick Stanton had 5 men and 2 excavators for a week. They could not do it. Tucker did not answer the question directly. Did Rick try to fight the building, or did he try to understand it? What do you mean? Did he study the structure before he started swinging? Did he look at how the stones were laid? Did he figure out the building's weakness before he attacked its strength? I do not think so. He just started hitting it. Tucker nodded. That is why he failed. You do not demolish a building like that by overpowering it. You demolish it by taking it apart, finding the structure's logic, and reversing it. Every building was put together in a specific order. You take it apart in the reverse order, and it comes down. You try to brute force it, and the building wins. Give me 3 days. If the building is not down in 3 days, you do not owe me a penny. Half of what Rick charged, $19,000. Louis called the mayor. The mayor said, "Yes. Let me tell you about what Tucker did next, because the first 4 hours are the reason this story is worth telling." Tucker did not bring his excavator the first day. He brought a ladder, a flashlight, a tape measure, and a notebook. He spent the entire morning inside the building, climbing through the wreckage, examining the walls, the columns, the foundation. He measured wall thickness at different points. He checked mortar joints. He studied how the stones were laid. He found what he was looking for on the south wall, about 4 feet above the foundation. A horizontal line of slightly different mortar, thinner and softer than the rest. This was the original foundation course, the first stones Orville Jessup had laid in 1903. Everything above rested on this course, and the mortar here had borne 111 years of weight. This was the building's weakness. The bottom course carried all the weight. Compromise the bottom, and the top comes down on its own. Gravity does the work that Rick Stanton's excavator could not. Tucker also found the second weakness. The 4 interior oak columns were resting on stone piers in the basement. After 111 years of moisture and insect damage, they were soft. The walls were doing most of the work now. Remove the wall's support at the base, and the whole structure becomes unstable. Tucker spent the afternoon drawing diagrams. He sketched the building from 4 angles, marked load-bearing points, calculated the sequence of demolition. He was not planning an attack. He was planning a surgery. He brought the Cat 345B the next morning, Tuesday. He unloaded it at sunrise and spent 30 minutes warming the engine, checking hydraulics, inspecting bucket teeth. At 8 in the morning, Tucker positioned the excavator at the south wall. But he did not swing at the top the way Rick's operator had. He lowered the boom and positioned the bucket at the base, right at that horizontal line of old mortar. Then he did something that looked completely wrong. Instead of hammering, he pressed the bucket teeth into the mortar joint and pushed, slowly, steadily, with the full hydraulic force of the 345B focused on a single point. The mortar cracked. Tucker worked the teeth into the crack, pried sideways, and popped out a stone. 1 stone, then another, then a third. He was not demolishing the wall. He was removing its foundation, 1 stone at a time. "What is he doing?" a city worker asked. "He is not even trying to knock it down." But Louis Fairchild was beginning to understand. "He is taking out the bottom," Louis said quietly. "Watch." Tucker worked along the base for 2 hours, removing stones from the bottom course in a line about 20 feet long. When he heard mortar cracking above him, when he saw hairline fractures appearing in the courses above the gap, he stopped. He backed the excavator away and waited. Not long, maybe 5 minutes. Then the south wall spoke. A deep, grinding groan. Dust poured from mortar joints. Cracks shot up the face of the limestone like lightning frozen in stone. And then the wall fell. A section 20 feet wide and 2 stories tall leaned outward, separated from the rest of the building, and collapsed into the street with a roar that shook windows 3 blocks away. The dust cloud rose 50 feet. People came out of shops along Main Street. Cars stopped. A woman across the street covered her mouth with her hand. For 111 years, that wall had been the most permanent thing on Main Street. And in 5 minutes, it was rubble. When the dust settled, Tucker was already repositioning. He had not flinched. He had not cheered. He had not even paused. He had known exactly what would happen because he had read the building the way a doctor reads an X-ray. The collapse was not a surprise. It was the plan. Louis Fairchild was standing across the street with his mouth open. He turned to the city worker beside him. 6 days, Louis said. Rick Stanton's crew worked 6 days and barely scratched the surface. This man just dropped an entire wall in 1 morning. By noon, the entire south wall was down. Tucker had demolished more wall in 4 hours than Rick Stanton's crew had managed in 5 days. With the south wall gone, Tucker switched tactics. He reached inside the building and began pulling out interior structure. The oak columns came first. Each one tore free and transferred more weight to remaining walls that were already compromised. The east wall went down at 3:15 in the afternoon. Tucker removed 4 stones from its base. It fell inward, burying the interior in a mountain of limestone blocks. By sunset on Tuesday, half the building was down. Tucker parked his excavator and drove home for dinner without saying a word. Wednesday morning, Tucker finished the job. The north wall, weakened by the collapse of the south and east, came down with minimal effort. 3 stones removed from its base. The wall fell with the tired resignation of something that had been standing too long and was finally given permission to rest. 111 years of standing against wind and rain and neglect, and it took 3 stones to end it. That is what happens when you remove the foundation. Everything above it is just waiting to fall. The west wall was last. Tucker took his time, pulling it inward section by section, guiding falling stones away from Main Street and into the building's footprint. He worked with the patience of a man who understood that the last wall was the most dangerous. One wrong move and limestone blocks would be rolling down Main Street into parked cars. Tucker did not make wrong moves. He read the wall, felt the machine, and placed every stone exactly where he wanted it. By 2 in the afternoon on Wednesday, Jessup's hardware was gone. 111 years of Orville Jessup's fortress reduced to a pile of limestone and oak timber, contained neatly within the original footprint. Tucker spent the rest of Wednesday and Thursday loading debris and clearing the lot. Louis Fairchild brought Tucker a check for $19,000 on Friday morning. "I have to ask," Louis said. "Rick Stanton had bigger machines and a week. You did it in 3 days, alone." "How?" Rick tried to overpower the building. He swung at the top and tried to break through by force. That is like trying to knock down a tree by hitting its branches. Do not knock down a tree by hitting branches. You cut the trunk. But how did you know where to cut? I spent a day studying that building before I touched it. I looked at how it was built, where the weight was carried, where the mortar was weakest. I did not try to beat the building. I figured out how it wanted to come apart and helped it along. Tucker tightened the last chain on his trailer. "My father taught me that every structure has a logic. Somebody built it in a certain order for a certain reason. If you understand that logic, you can reverse it. You do not need a bigger hammer. You need a better understanding." Rick Stanton heard about Tucker. He drove down to Harlan and found Tucker rebuilding a hydraulic cylinder. "I want to know how you did it," Rick said. "I had 2 machines and 5 men for a week. You took it down in 3 days." Tucker set down his wrench and looked at Rick. He did not gloat. He did not lecture. He just spoke plainly, the way mountain people speak when they are telling you something that matters. "You fought the building. I worked with it." Tucker wiped his hands. Every building has a structure, a logic. It was put together by a man who understood how to make stones hold each other up. If you understand that logic, you can find the keystone, the one piece holding everything else in place. Remove that piece, and the building takes itself apart. Where did you learn that? My father. He taught me that a machine is only as smart as the man running it. The biggest excavator in the world is useless if the operator does not understand what he is tearing down. You can have $300,000 worth of equipment, and it will not matter if the man in the seat does not know what he is looking at. Rick was quiet for a long time. He looked at the Cat 345B sitting in Tucker's yard, a machine worth maybe $40,000 on the open market. His own equipment fleet was worth 10 times that. But Tucker had done in 3 days what Rick could not do in a week. "I have been in demolition for 20 years, Rick said. "I have torn down hospitals, factories, parking garages. I have never been beaten by a building until that hardware store." "You were not beaten by the building," Tucker said. "You were beaten by the man who built it." Orville Jessup knew what he was doing. He built those walls to stand forever. The only way to take them down was to respect his work enough to understand it. Rick offered Tucker a partnership, Tucker's knowledge and Rick's resources. Tucker turned him down, not because the money was not good, but because Tucker Ramsey and his cat 345B had a relationship that did not include a third party. They had been working together for 8 years. They understood each other, and that was enough. Tucker is 68 now. He still operates the 345B, though less frequently than he used to. His knees complain on cold mornings, and his back reminds him of every hour he has spent in that cab. But his hands are still steady, and his ears are still sharp. The machine has over 35,000 hours on it. Most excavators are scrapped at 20,000. But Tucker has rebuilt every component so many times that the only original part is the frame. The machine is like the old philosophical riddle about the ship. Replace every plank. Is it still the same ship? Tucker says yes, because what makes his excavator what it is not the parts. It is the hours they have spent together, the jobs they have done, the buildings they have read and understood and taken apart together. Tucker's son, Caleb, is learning the trade now. Tucker tells him the same thing Henry told Tucker 50 years ago. Do not just move the levers, son. Feel what the bucket is touching. Listen to what the machine is telling you, and before you tear anything down, take the time to understand how it was built. Because the man who understands the building will always beat the man who just hits it harder. The lot on the corner of Main Street and Cumberland Avenue is a small park now. There is a bench and a few trees and a historical marker. The marker does not mention Orville Jessup's 18-inch limestone walls or the 4 oak columns that held the building for a century. It does not mention that the building defeated a professional demolition crew before a man with an older machine and a better understanding brought it down in 3 days. But the people of Harlan remember. They remember the sound of that south wall coming down. They remember the dust cloud rising 50 feet into the air. They remember the old man in the cab who never flinched. They tell the story at the Pine Mountain Grill over coffee and pie. And if you ask them how one man with one machine did what a full crew could not, they will give you the answer Tucker gave Louis Fairchild on that Friday morning. It is not about the size of the machine. It is about the size of the understanding. And understanding always starts with taking the time to look before you swing.